Well, hello there. I'm Diane Evans at PhotoFluent. I'm running a little late today. It's been one of those crazy, crazy days. So, welcome to our weekly live program. I have a lot of new folks joining my community. Thank you. Very excited about that. One of the things I love the most about PhotoFluent is the online connections and community that we have and that is growing. I would say that we are a whole bunch of creative travelers who love travel, and we love telling our story with travel through photos. And it's a lot of fun to connect and talk about all kinds of stuff. So welcome. And a little introduction. I'm Diane. I came from a background of a long, not so joyous career in healthcare here in the United States. And I recently-ish founded PhotoFluent, where I teach travelers how to create photos they love that tell their story. I do that through online classes, through mentoring, and soon, spoiler alert, teaser, all of that stuff, retreats. I'm in the works, scheduling my first retreat, and I'm so excited. I can't tell you details yet, but as soon as I have them, I'll let you know. All right. And we meet here every week to talk about a topic, a different topic. And this week our topic is, drum roll please, wish I had sound effects. I don't. The 3 things that people are surprised at when I critique their photos. So let's talk about that. First of all, what is a photo critique and why even do it? Well, okay. So a photo critique is when you submit your photos to a professional photographer and they give their feedback. Things like what could have been better, what was really good, how camera settings could have made a difference, how angle or perspective or composition could have changed some things, how editing can help it. So it's just getting that objective feedback. And when I say objective, it's because when you make the photo, you're not objective. Think about when you look at your photos, you don't just look at it from I like the color and I like the way those leading lines bring me into the subject. You look at it like, oh, I remember that. That was so much fun, or that place was crazy. You have a lot of emotional attachment. You remember maybe even taking the photo, like weaving through this crowd, leaning over a gate, trying to get just the right angle. And so you have all that connection and think, oh, that is an awesome photo. But is it always? I know this from experience. There are times where I think this is the best photo I have ever made. And then other people look at it and go, that's nice. So disappointing. But here's the thing. That's what a photo critique is for. And is it a little intimidating? It can be if you let it be. But this person that's doing the critiques isn't the end-all be-all wizard of photography. It's just their opinion. They just have an objective opinion, and maybe, hopefully, they've had a little more experience than you, or different experience, training. So, great learning experience. Probably the best way that I have learned is to get feedback from photographers on my photos, because otherwise you're kind of in this vacuum. You take the photo, you think something's not quite right, but I don't know what. You take another photo, something not quite right. So I do remember my first experience. It was that I lived in Denver and I took a workshop. We were given an assignment, but we were just supposed to bring in a photo for him to give us feedback on. I picked my all-time favorite photo. I took it in Peru. I was so proud of this photo. And I turned it in and I'm thinking, oh yeah, he's gonna go crazy over this photo. He's gonna be like, wow, this is one talented woman right here. He didn't. I I was a little disappointed, I won't lie. I really thought this might be the time that I get discovered. I look back at that photo now and think it wasn't even that good. But I was so tied to it and I loved it. So, guess what? I still love it. I now, with all this extra experience, realize what was wrong with it, but you can still love it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay? So get past the, I don't know if I can handle that criticism, because it's not criticism. Critique is, it's a French word, so it's softer than criticism. It's feedback. All right. So we've gotten through the why. Here are the three things. When I do a lot of critiques, let me start with that. I do a lot of critiques both in group settings, one-to-one, and there are three things I started to see a pattern. These are the three surprises that people most hear in my critiques. Thing number one, distractions. This is something you just don't think of at first until somebody kind of reminds you. And then once that seed is in there and planted, then you really start to keep an eye out for it. So you look at the subject, right? So you get to this place that you've never been and you're all excited. And this still happens to me where I get distracted by the excitement of the new place. But you get there, you look at something, a building, a person, a scene, and you take a picture. What is sometimes there that you don't recognize or see is something like a tourist with a neon outfit on. Why they do that, I don't know. If you're one that wears neon, please stop. It ruins all of our pictures. A trash can, a white car that shines in the light. Our eyes go to bright light, bright colors, what's in focus. So if there's something very bright or ugly, like a trash can, then rather looking at the subject, the viewer is going to go drifting off to that distraction. One way to get rid of distractions is to change your angle. So this is in London, lots of people around, lots of cars. So rather than getting all of that in there, I really focused on the building. It's clearly the star because there's nothing else in there. And this one too, this is in New York City. Couldn't be a busier city. Well, maybe there are, but it seems pretty busy. And I wanted to get this group of buildings in Battery Park. So that's all you see. And then it becomes almost an abstract, right? Shapes, lines, colors, reflections. And here's another example of what you can do to kind of eliminate distractions. First of all, just be aware that they're there, but the angle that you shoot. So this pillar is blocking a car. So I see the car. I don't want it in there, so I can't move the car. I could go over there and say, excusez-moi, monsieur, and ask him to move his car, but you're not going to do that, right? But you can move behind that pillar and let it hide the car. Now, you're not looking at that going, I bet that pillar is hiding something. It just looks like an element in my photo then. Thing number 2. Hey, what's the subject here? Whenever I ask people that, it's like, I don't know. Or maybe that guy. I'm not saying that every single photo I get back, I look at exactly and know. Sometimes it takes a little help in the editing department to really hone in. But if you're intentional, if you start off by identifying what the subject is, then the outcome will very likely be better. And why it's important, think of the photos that you've taken that you look at later and think, what was I even taking a picture of? Your eyes don't know where to go. They're going all over the place because there's too much going on. So even in a landscape, there's mountains. Pick one mountain or a foreground flower or a particular color in the sunset, something that is your focal point of the photo. Here in Annecy, France, It's a beautiful scene. The subject is the bicycle. So sometimes I'll take the same scene and make multiple photos with different subjects. Like I might have done one where the door behind it was more the subject. And you can do that by changing your depth of field, where you're standing, kind of where you place that in the frame. And this is New York City, right in front of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. All kinds of busyness going on. I wanted to capture that vendor. And so that's what I made the subject here. Sometimes light can help you, sometimes light can hurt you, but light you can kind of fiddle with a little bit in Lightroom to give you some more editing later to help with that. But even though there's a lot going on, I think it's very clear that the gentleman in the stand, what would you call that, trailer, is my subject here. And this is another example of making the subject clear. So although there's two people, there's lots of produce, there's buildings, there's stuff, the gentleman in the front picking out the oranges is my subject. How do I do that? Placement in the frame, shallow depth of field. Our eyes go naturally to what's the brightest, what's in focus. So if you play around with those elements, you can kind of pull the eye towards your subject, right? Now, thing number 3. This is a big surprise for a lot of people. The impact of editing. And even if my students have played around with editing before, I think they're always surprised when an outside person comes into their photo and edits it a little bit. Because we get in that, either we're not that familiar with editing, or you get in the same routine and habits and just do the same things. So to have somebody else come in and do something a little different, you think, wow, that is a pretty good photo. Here are some examples, just before and after. Before is on the left, after is on the right. You can see that my subject becomes more clear. You can see more in the shadows. I do very natural type editing. I don't want it to look like a whole different picture. I just like to give it a little makeover. And this is another before and after. Like, there's no pretty sky on the left, but on the right, we get some pretty blue sky. And a very different angle of the Eiffel Tower. And here's another before and after. Again, not so pretty of a sky, but I love those gargoyles. So I wanted to just see if this worked, because it was a pretty contrasty day, very bright sky with a lot of clouds, which reflect the light and make it worse. Et voila, a little editing, and there are my gargoyles back, and my beautiful sky. 3 things that people are surprised by is what the blog post was about. Here's a bonus thing I thought I'd share with you on our live show today. That is, I made all the same mistakes you did. I kind of always assume that's obvious. Like, nobody just started off figuring this all out. It took a lot of trial and error, a lot of workshops, me making mistakes. But that has surprised a lot of my students when I say, oh yeah, I used to do that too. Or if I show them some that I still make mistakes on, it's surprising to them, because it's like they figure that I'm somehow over it, the mistakes part, or that I was just a natural born photographer. Maybe that's more surprising to me than to my students, that they are surprised by that. But I remember thinking, when I've had instructors show us their beginning work, it was such a relief, because I thought, oh, it makes me feel so good. We all started somewhere. We all started with putting the subject right in the middle of the frame and not having no idea how to do exposure and shooting in automatic mode. Everybody starts there. And you just kind of grow from there. All right, my dear friends, resources and links for this week. The blog post is bephotofluent.com/blog/photo critiques. It's the very first one on the list. You won't miss it. If you haven't joined our PhotoFluent Travelers Facebook group, come on in. We're getting ready for our next monthly challenge to start in May. Ooh, what will it be? And if you still haven't grabbed the Camera Creativity Guide, it is a fabulous way to get inspiration, get your camera out there and try some fun new things. And then come on into the Facebook group and show us what you're up to. Well, that's all for today. I love doing these. Thanks for showing up. And I'll put the link to the blog post so you can read that. And if you have any comments or questions, I love to hear from you. So pop them into the comments. And if you're watching me on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. All right. See you later. Have a lovely day.